Alright, a pleasant day to everyone. So, for today, we're going to have a recorded lecture. This is about the United Nations and contemporary global governance, which is on lesson 4. No? So, for today, we're going to be fusing two lessons which we weren't able to discuss last time. No? So it's going to be lesson 4 and also lesson 5. Right, so before I start, so at the end of the lesson, you should be able to define global governance, identify the roles and functions of the United Nations or the UN, and also determine the challenges of global governance in the 21st century. So, as we all know, as was what's previously discussed last time, there are actually international organizations, no? And uh, these organizations are not only limited to state or government to government nga interactions, but they also have there are also certain organizations that actually regulates or monitors the relationships or the political or economic relationships of several nga countries. But to start, wala joy single global organization nga pwede makadictate sa tanan nga mga states or mga countries or walay isa ka organization or global nga government nga pwede mag legislate og laws nga dapat ang kato nga mga states mo follow adto. So, no such thing as a global rule that everyone adheres to. So, ang semblance of order or formality is that some states may sign treaties, agreements, and they also may form organization that will, in the process, legislate public international law. So, international cooperation and agreement is, I think I wasn't able to include this in the slide, but it's the key, no? So, muna siya ang murag semblance of order in terms sa international, what we term as international communities, no? What I mean with international community is a group of states or sovereign nations who are cooperating, no, or cooperating with each other, forming agreements, making trades, or making diplomatic or political nga interactions. So, one international organization that we're going to focus on this lesson is the United Nations. So, I'm going to talk about the several different organs or divisions sa UN. Okay, so international organization. This actually refers to international intergovernmental organizations or groups that are primarily made up of member states. So these IOs, what I'd like to call them now, international organizations, they have several different powers. So you have here classification. They're also able to fix meanings and they're also able to diffuse norms. So let's talk about how each of these powers are being being used or being utilized. No, so the power to classify, this IOs can actually invent and apply categories. They can also create powerful global nga standards. Say for instance, ang International Labor Organization, they're able to actually have these labor standards that some of the states can actually adopt into, no? So, pwede ra nga i-ratify sa isa ka state ang kani nga mga standard when it comes to labor. So, murag silbi sila ang murag bitong mag-set og standard like pila ka hours ang dapat render sa isa ka worker or sa isa ka employee, no? something like that, no? So magdepende na na siya sa implementation sa mga lain-lain nga states. Then we also have some of the IO's power to fix meanings. So they also serve as a legitimate source of information. Let's say, for example, ang World Health Organization. The World Health Organization was one of the organizations tasked to oversee or to regulate the health standards, healthcare, uh, all about the implementation or all about the something to do with healthcare or the healthcare system of a certain country or a certain states. So during the global pandemic, they actually became the legit uh, or international organization tasked to mitigate the effects or the casualties that the pandemic has actually caused. No? So, ang kanang mask mandate, ang required or ang mandatory wearing of mask, ang kanang standard nga quarantine time or quarantine days and determining kung when pwede ra ma-determine nga ang isa ka tao is COVID-free, that actually came all of that information actually came from the World Health Organization, since they actually serve as one of the legit source of information during this pandemic. No? And you also have the international organization's power to diffuse norms. So they're also able to spread their ideas or norms across the globe. So if we're going to use the World Health Organization, no, so they actually advocated for several countries to follow these health protocols, as we would like to term it, no. So in order for them to mitigate the effects of COVID or in order for them to contain the spread of COVID across different nations, no? So they actually suggested or implemented kanang quarantine or lockdowns, no? It's for them to actually stem the spread of the virus. So in a sense, there are some countries who are able to actually effectively implement this quarantine or this restrictions na apoy uban nga murag somewhat lax or dili kay sila nag-implement ani, no. For instance, I think I would say ang USA siguro, because there are some parts or there are some states in the US that are not really adhering to the mask mandate, no. So murag optional na lang siya or wala gyud like any semblance of following sa mask nga mandate. Okay, now that we're done with that, no, sa ilang power sa international organization, then we have the five active divisions sa United Nations. So, actually, United Nation was actually formed after the collapse of the League of Nations and sa World War II. Then it was also formed as a um, preventive measure kay para we can avert or we can prevent any war from happening, no. So murag mo dyan na siya ang iyang single purpose or single nga end goal sa iyang existence, which is to not only to prevent war but also to actually make nations establish their own what do you call this, their own international nga mga laws or have them adopt some international laws. So there are just five main divisions or departments sa United Nations. You have here the General Assembly. This is the main deliberative policymaking and representative organ for the UN. So dinhi, this is usually conducted in a plenary. Mura siya o ganang Congress. You can just picture it out as a Congress wherein ang gasit is not representative, dili siya congressman, but representatives or ambassadors from several different countries and nations. And lahi pod ang function ni UN Security Council. So, the Security Council actually determines the existence of threat to peace or determine whether something or a state or a nation actually committed an act of aggression towards another nga states. Then we also have the Economic and Social Council nga division for the UN. So this council is actually responsible for the coordination, the policymaker on social and environmental nga issues. Then we also have the International Court of Justice. It settles cases in accordance with international law, and the Secretariat. It composes of the Secretary General and the tens and thousands of the UN nga mga staffs. So, before I proceed with the challenges no sa UN, so let's focus more on the UN Security Council. So kaning UN Security Council, this is actually like the police, no? Murag siya ang equivalent sa murag police sa isa ka state. Or let's say na kay global nga government or global nga state. Si UN Security Council, it's actually acting more of the kanang police or the PNP. Siya ang tig-implement sa international law sa United Nations. No? Siya ang mura bitaw kanang peacekeeper. And the UN Security Council has 5 permanent seats for the countries which are China. You have here China, USA, Russia, France, and Germany. Sorry, no, it's UK. So you have here China, France, Russia, UK, and United States of America. These are the what they call the permanent five sa UN Security Council. Now, what's the purpose or unsa may function aning mga lima ka buok ka permanent five? So this five nations actually sit at the Security Council, not according to being elected, but they are already na sila murag fixed nga designation sa UN Security Council. Now, anything related to security issues, no, in any state, they actually have a say whether they will implement a certain measure or not, no. So what do I mean by this? Naa sila'y veto nga power. They can actually veto a certain council decisions. It only takes one country to actually issue a veto decision for that decision to be considered null and void. Now, let's say for example, no, si UN Security Council, ganahan siya mag-send og peacekeepers. They actually call it peacekeepers or mga soldiers sa dito sa Ukraine for them to be able to extend humanitarian aid dito sa Ukraine since there's an ongoing war with Russia and Ukraine. Now, it so happens nga ang Russia is actually one of the permanent five nga countries sa Security Council. So, if ever nga i-veto ni Russia ang decision ni Security Council nga mag-send og soldiers dito sa Ukraine, then wala na mahimo si UN. So, that's what I mean with the veto power sa Security Council. So, just any one of those states or nation nga mag-veto adto nga decision, that will render the decision nil or null and void, no? So that's how powerful this organ of the UN is, no? So we also have the International Court of Justice, no? They actually settle cases in accordance with international law. So for example, there have been some cases of genocide na happened dito sa Myanmar, no? So they will actually place that country or state in within their jurisdiction. So dili tao ang inahang ginaput in trial dire, but they are actually putting in trial the state, no, and why it is actually having this kind of case, or why is it having genocide in its own territory. So it's usually kana mga government officials nga ang ilang ginapanagot ana. And if they found out nga guilty jud ni sila nga mga states of having genocide within their own territory, they will actually impose, or they will actually implement some sanctions, no? Okay, so now that we have discussed the five different nga mga um, divisions sa UN, so let's now go to some of the challenges sa UN. So what are some of these challenges nga gaka encounter sa UN? So UN is actually unable to intervene unless states cooperate or allow it. Now, an instance of this would be the UN Commission on Human Rights. No. So I think most of you have heard of this from the news or any media outlet that the UNCHR is actually, or it's actually intent on um, conducting a probe or investigation on the state of human rights, or for any possible nga human rights violation there is sa Philippines. But the Philippine government will not allow any of their officials or any of their representatives to conduct the probe, simply because doing such thing, if we actually no, I think that's the ICC, no. But the thing is, the Philippine government will not allow it simply because they would insist nga there's actually already a mechanism to address such issues, no. And also UNSC intervention, the Security Council intervention is sometimes hindered by the permanent five's political and diplomatic relation with the concerned nga state. So what if ang naay council decision nga um, would send military intervention in a certain state? And katong permanent five nga countries, kato si Russia, China, France, UK, and US, ila tong ally nga countries. And they don't want the Security Council intervening adto nga country. It's because murag masira ang ilahang diplomatic nga relations adto nga country. So they can sometimes veto such decision, and that would render the SC unable to extend any military intervention, no. So wala ra gyapon siya mabuhat adto. And also I would like to add, wala ni siya sa text reference, no. The World Health Organization implemented a mask mandate and quarantine policies, and this was actually adopted and implemented by several different countries, no. And that's to mitigate or address the global pandemic crisis. However, some states in the countries like USA decided to be lenient and or not to adopt such measures at all. No, I think it's not only the USA which has defied these mask mandate and quarantine policies, but also several different countries had rise in protests ani nga mga measures kay they think that it's actually dictatorial, or they actually think nga murag it's actually too much na, no. Okay, so what else? What did I um okay, so we also have another example, no, sa kana bitang ongoing nga Ukraine and Russia nga murag proxy war. Um the Russia is actually conducting, or they're actually trying to annex, or they're trying to regain those some parts of Ukraine before nga part sa Soviet Union. And it's it's also another reason nga ilang gi-conquer or murag ilang gi-invade ang Ukraine. It's because um Ukraine is actually planning to be a member of NATO, no? The NATO, or the North Atlantic Treaty or organization, it was one of the organizations before nga mura bitaw kalaban siya sa USSR, no? With the dismantlement of USSR in 1991, no, wala naman ang Soviet Union before, and ang nabili na lang is ang Russia. So, wala na sense para i-continue pa ang existence sa NATO. But NATO still exists, no? And not only does it exist, but in fact, it is actually continuing to grow. Several different countries in the east, no, sorry, in the west of Russia are actually joining NATO, and it's actually posing a threat sa Russia. That's why, murag in their own defense and in their own retaliation, they have decided to invade Ukraine. Okay? It's for them to distance. They wanted to create some buffer zone or distance from these NATO aligned nga mga countries. Why is it nga murag naka-alarm sila aning NATO? Just imagine several different countries pulling their resources together to actually initiate a military nga intervention. So you are talking millions, tens of thousands, and millions ng mga soldiers, or several different countries that can potentially, or that can actually wage war with Russia. And Russia being the biggest continent and the biggest nation um, there is a world, it's not actually immune to being, it's actually how do I term this, no? The Russia being a big country that it is, with all of its several different resources, actually knows when a threat actually exists, no? So the Russia actually still considers the NATO as a threat, no? Kay, 'di ba, na dismantle naman ang Soviet Union. What's the purpose of the NATO nga mag-exist pa man siya, nga human naman ang, I mean, wala naman ang Soviet Union before, no? So there's that, no? And ang UN Security Council, they actually wanted to, intervene, no, but they cannot. Kay naaman si Russia, part man si Russia sa permanent five ng mga countries, no? Even if ganahan sila mag-intervene, but it only takes one veto power, or one vote of, veto, para i-render ilang decisions into complete null and void. And also to think nga Russia is also an ally of China, no? So China could just abstain, or could just issue an abstention sa any council decisions, then dili na mo pursue kato nga council decision. So there's that. Okay, so this ends the topic for the lesson 4, or the UN. So um, we're going to discuss the other parts, which is the world of regions.